There are many Hindus themselves who have unfortunately rejected this capacity to seek and this capability to seek, and have become blind believers of a rhetoric. And because of this, they have uh, gone to the extent of completely dismissing any allegations or any accusations of Hindu phobia in the 21st century, and they discard any such assertions that Hindu phobia is a reality. So, how do we find a solution to this? How do we go into a conversation with these negationists, as we call them, that no, the discrimination that the Hindu community faces is in fact a reality, and it is to be recognized?
I think it requires two things. One is the recognition that divide and rule as a policy is a strategy to separate brother from brother, brother from sister, sister from sister, father from son. I think it says in the Bible, Jesus Christ actually said, I have come to separate brother from brother. How much more obvious would you want it to be? So the first thing is that people need to recognize, and this is easily done, that we have a history of being the target of those who would like us to destroy ourselves. There is nothing that pleases a white supremacist more than seeing brown people kill each other. Okay, it's a simple observation and a statement of fact which is undisputable. Macaulay, in his famous minute, declared the intention very clearly. Right? He said we need to create a class of brown people who are brown in appearance, Indian in appearance, but whose ideals, morals, intellect, values are entirely English. So he recognized the capacity to completely condition a person, so much so that they would then turn against their own family. This is also a fact of history. And studying divide and rule, I think it was Lord Canning who made the remark that it worked. Divide and rule was the strategy of the Roman Caesars. It worked for the Romans. It will work for us in India. It was clear policy. And so the first thing is that anybody who is entering this conversation, whether they're saying Hindu phobia doesn't exist, whether they're saying Hindu phobia does exist, needs to be aware of the background of how divide and rule identity politics works. This is number one. Once you become aware of it, then any wise person who is engaged with courtesy and respect will turn back and think, well, hang on, was this done to me? Have I become a victim? Am I a pawn, an unknowing pawn in somebody else's grand scheme for the erasure of my own civilization? See, that question won't dawn on a person unless they first understand the process by which this is done. And then suddenly you come across the multiple occasions where the British so successfully managed to give economic advantage to one member of the family, economic disadvantage to another member of the family, and then blamed it on each other and stepped back themselves. This is how divide and rule politics works. In Ireland, a tiny little island just off the coast of England, we have Northern Ireland, which is British, Southern Ireland, which is Republican, and there is a war and a battle going on, and it has been going on ever since the British arrived there and experimented with this divide and rule policy. So firstly, anybody who is denying Hindu phobia, it would be worth reflecting upon whether they have been co-opted unknowingly to do the bidding of somebody who historically hated everything to do with the Sanatani civilization. That will be a revelation for them. Secondly, is we still live in a world where facts and words mean specific things. And there is legislation. There are words on pieces of paper around the world which clearly establish that human rights, equality, all of those wonderful things are enshrined in law. The issue is that we have never used the Western world's law against some of the people who would want to do us harm. And we need to do it. And Dr. Swamiji is superb at leveraging the letter of the law in order to protect the dharmic ideas. We need to have more and more people who are doing this. And the legislation is there. I often tell people that in 2007, 177 countries gathered at the United Nations and passed the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People. It's a wonderful piece of legislation. And it clearly says that a government has its principal responsibility to preserve and protect its own indigenous traditions. This is a United Nations declaration. And yet in Bharat, we have legislation which acts against the interests of the indigenous people of that country, the Hindu civilization there. So some skillful young lawyer wanting to make a name for themselves should bring some sort of an action, a petition to the United Nations on behalf of the indigenous people of Bharat under the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People and hold the Indian government to account. The law is really clear. It's established, it's clear, the outcome is entirely predictable. So I'm afraid it exists. I'm afraid we have to find the courage to be able to stand up and say, no, these are our rights and our rights are now being challenged, our rights are being denied to us, and we will not accept anything less than equality of rights and privileges, the same as everybody else. That's what we're asking for. It's a fight. We have to get used to fighting. We have to get used to defending our boundaries. More often than not, civilized people prefer to come to a negotiated settlement. Amongst civilized people, explanations and understanding is the way in which you move forward. But when you have one civilization engaging with conversations with people with a barbaric understanding, then you can't engage with the old ways of doing things. One has to, there's no point in taking a knife to a gunfight, as they say. One has to leverage the same weaponry of the Kurukshetra. And so that means courage, it means act, it means engage. It means yatha ichchasi tatha kuru, become your own kshatriya and engage. And as we do it, we will find that actually we will thrive and prosper. And not only that, all of humanity will benefit.
Please remember to subscribe to us and switch on the notifications for this channel. For our other social media links, more content, and to support our work, please visit citti.net. Dhanyavad. Namaskar.